Okay, so today I want to talk about something that I think almost nobody is paying attention to right now. And that's actually interesting to me because when you understand what's really happening, you realize that the most important story of this war is not the bombs falling on Iran. It's not the missiles over the Gulf. It's not even the Strait of Hormuz. The most important story of this war is what China is doing, or more precisely, what China is not doing. Because China is sitting very quietly. It's not firing any missiles. It's not sending any troops. It's not threatening anyone. It's just watching. And while it's watching, it is winning. Winning in a way that will shape the next 50 years of global history entirely. Okay, before we start, I want to address the comments. A lot of you are writing Chinese propaganda, always praising China. Typical bias. I'm a teacher. I look at patterns and data. That is my job. So here's my challenge to you. If my data is wrong, tell me. Write in the comments, "Sir, your data is incorrect. Here's the real data." I will read it. I will correct myself. But if you cannot find anything wrong with the data, then do not talk about my identity. Talk about the argument. Attacking the person is not thinking. It is avoiding thinking. Okay? Now, let's begin. I want to walk you through this very carefully because to understand what China is doing, you first need to understand the game being played. The game is very simple. It is a game about oil, about who controls oil, and about what happens to the country that controls oil. Let's start from the beginning. What is the most important resource in the world today? Some people say semiconductors, some people say water, some say rare earth minerals. But actually, if you think carefully, the answer is still oil. Because oil runs everything. It runs factories, ships, trucks, airplanes, and armies. Without oil, the global economy stops. Without oil, wars cannot be fought. Without oil, modern civilization, as we know it, simply cannot function. And here's the key thing I want you to understand. The country that controls the flow of oil does not just control energy. It controls everything. It controls the global economy. It controls the behavior of other nations. It controls who gets rich and who gets poor. This is what Americans understood after World War II, and this is exactly why they built the petrodollar system. Let me explain what the petrodollar actually is. After World War II, America made a deal with Saudi Arabia. The deal was very simple. Saudi Arabia sells all its oil in US dollars, only US dollars. Not pounds, not francs, not any other currency, only US dollars. In exchange, America protects the Saudi royal family and keeps them in power. Now, why is this important? Because if everyone in the world has to buy oil in US dollars, then everyone in the world needs US dollars. And if everyone needs US dollars, then America can print as many dollars as it wants, and everyone will still accept them. This means America can run massive budget deficits. It can borrow unlimited money. It can fund the biggest military in the world. It can build its entire financial empire on Wall Street. This is the real secret of American power. Not aircraft carriers, not nuclear weapons, not even technology. The secret of American power is the petrodollar system. The dollar is the oil currency. And because of that, the dollar rules the world. So now you understand why controlling oil is so important. Whoever controls the oil controls the dollar. And whoever controls the dollar controls the world. So now let's ask one question. Who is the biggest threat to the petrodollar system right now? China. Now, I want to be very careful here because I want you to think about this like a strategist. Not like a journalist, not like a politician, like a strategist. China is the largest importer of oil in the world. Every single day, China imports about 11 million barrels of oil. Think about that number. 11 million barrels. Every single day. China's entire economy, its factories, its cities, its military, runs entirely on imported oil. And here is the most important thing. For the past decade, China has been doing something very clever. It has been buying Iranian oil, not in US dollars, in Chinese yuan at a discount. Because Iran is under American sanctions, it cannot sell oil on the open market. So it sells quietly to China at a cheap price. China pays in yuan, not dollars. Last year, before this war started, China was buying about 1.38 million barrels of Iranian oil every single day. That is about 13% of China's total oil imports. And most of this was done secretly under false flags. Ships carrying Iranian oil would stop in Malaysia or Indonesia, change their documentation, and sail to China, labeled as Malaysian oil. This is how China was getting cheap oil while avoiding American sanctions entirely. But it's not just Iran. China also had Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And Venezuela, like Iran, was under American sanctions. And Venezuela, like Iran, was selling its oil to China at a discount, in yuan, not dollars. So China had built this beautiful system. Cheap oil from sanctioned countries paid in yuan, not dollars. This is a direct attack on the petrodollar system. Because every barrel of oil traded in yuan is a barrel that doesn't need dollars. And if enough barrels are traded in yuan, the dollar loses its dominance. The Americans understood this. And this is actually, and I want you to pay very close attention here, this is actually one of the real reasons for this war. Let me explain this properly, because I think most people are getting confused about what this war is really about. The official reason for the war is simple. Iran has nuclear ambitions. Iran is a threat to Israel. Iran supports terrorism. These reasons were given publicly. Sure, these things are true to some degree, but they are not the real reason. The real reason is the petrodollar. Think about what America did in the 2 months before this war started. First, in January, America arrested Venezuela's leadership and took control of Venezuelan oil fields. China's Venezuelan oil supply was cut off. Then, in February, America launched this war against Iran. China's Iranian oil supply was cut off. In just 2 months, America cut off more than 20% of China's total oil imports. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. The war against Iran is also a war against China's energy supply. The Americans are trying to strangle China's economy by cutting off its cheap oil. Now, a journalist would stop here and say, okay, so America is hurting China. America is winning. But a strategist asks the next question. Is this strategy actually working? And what happens next? This is where it gets very interesting. Let's think about what China did when the war started. The Americans expected China to panic. They expected China to scramble for oil. They expected China to be weakened. Because if you lose 20% of your oil imports suddenly, that is a very serious problem. But here's what actually happened. China did not panic. China did not scramble. China was prepared. First, China had already built one of the largest strategic oil reserves in the world. Before this war started, China had enough oil stored to last several months, even if all imports stopped completely. Dalian Port, Joshan Port, massive underground storage facilities across the country. China had been quietly building these reserves for years because China knew this day was coming. Second, China had Russia. Russia already supplies more than 17% of China's oil imports. And Russia is under American sanctions too. Russia also sells oil to China in yuan, not dollars. So when Iranian and Venezuelan oil was cut off, China simply turned to Russia. And Russia was very happy to sell more. Russia needs the money. Third, and this is the most clever part, China kept its factories going. China's economy did not collapse. Transportation fuel costs went up about 10% monthly, some disruption, some price increases, but nothing catastrophic. China adjusted because it had planned for exactly this scenario. So the American strategy of strangling China through the oil war did not work, not the way America expected. But here is where the story gets really interesting. And this is the part that almost nobody is talking about right now. While America thought it was attacking China through this war, it was actually doing something far more beneficial for China. It was destroying its own position in the Middle East. It was creating a vacuum that China is now quietly moving to fill. Let me explain what I mean. Think about the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain. These are the countries that are the foundation of the petrodollar system. They sell oil in dollars. They invest their oil profits in American banks, American stocks, American bonds. This is called petrodollar recycling. And this recycling is what keeps the American financial system alive. Now, what has this war done to the Gulf states? Iran has been targeting them systematically. Iranian drones struck the Fujairah oil industry zone in the UAE. Iranian missiles targeted Qatar's Ras Laffan, the biggest gas facility in the world. Iranian drones and missiles have been hitting Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Schools in the UAE are doing remote learning because of Iranian strikes. The Gulf states are terrified. And who is protecting them? America, right? America is supposed to protect them. That is the whole deal. That is why they sell oil in dollars, because America protects them. But here's the problem. America has been failing to protect them. Iranian drones are getting through, Iranian missiles are hitting their facilities, and the Gulf states are watching this very carefully. They are asking a very important question. If America cannot protect us from Iranian drones right now, when America is fully committed to this war, what happens in the future? Can we really trust America to protect us forever? And this question, this doubt, this is exactly what is destroying the very foundation of the petrodollar system. Now, I want to introduce a concept because I think this concept is the key to understanding everything. In geopolitics, what matters most is not what you do, it is what others believe you can do. This is called credibility. And credibility, once lost, is almost impossible to rebuild. America's credibility in the Middle East is being destroyed by this war. Not because America is losing every battle, but because America is failing to achieve its objectives. The war was supposed to be quick. Iran was supposed to surrender. The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to be reopened. None of this has happened. Iran is still standing. The Strait of Hormuz is still contested. And Iranian drones are still hitting Gulf state facilities. Every day this continues, the Gulf states become less confident in America and less confident in the petrodollar deal. The deal was simple. We give you the petrodollar. You protect us. America is not holding up its end of the deal. Now, into this vacuum of American credibility, China is stepping. And China is doing it very cleverly, very quietly, without firing a single shot. What exactly is China doing? Let me be very specific. First, China has positioned itself as the responsible global power calling for peace. While America is bombing and attacking, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is on the phone, calling Iran, calling Israel, calling the Gulf states, calling Russia, calling for ceasefires, calling for negotiations, calling for dialogue. Think about what this does for China's image in the Gulf states. The Gulf states are being attacked by Iran. They are suffering. They look around. America is fighting a war that brought this suffering on them. China is calling for peace. Which one looks like the responsible partner? Second, China helped broker the ceasefire negotiations. The White House itself admitted that high-level talks took place involving China around the ceasefire deal. Trump even said publicly that China helped get Iran to the negotiating table. Think about that. The most powerful man in the world is publicly giving credit to China for helping stop the war. China is positioning itself as the peacemaker, while America is the war maker. Third, and this is the most important long-term move, China is now talking to everyone. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, the Gulf states that are suffering from this war. And China is offering them something very attractive, an alternative, a different kind of relationship. Because here's the thing, the Gulf states need a security guarantor. They need someone to protect them. If America is no longer fully reliable and this war has seriously damaged America's reliability, then who else is there? China is the answer. China is the world's largest oil importer. The Gulf states need buyers. China needs oil. And China is offering the Gulf states something America never offered. Trade without political conditions, investment without regime change demands, security cooperation without military occupation. Now, I want to walk you through the long-term consequences because this is where most analysts stop too early. They look at the short term. They say, okay, China was disrupted. China's oil supply was hit. China is suffering some economic pain. America is hurting China. And they stop there. But this is completely wrong thinking. Because the game being played here is not a short-term game. It is a generational game. Let me give you a thought experiment. Imagine you are a chess player and your opponent is trying to take your queen by sacrificing his rook. In the short term, losing your rook is painful. You lost a piece. Your opponent looks like he's winning. But a smart chess player looks 3 moves ahead and realizes, I lose the rook, but in 3 moves, I win the game. This is exactly what is happening with China and the oil war. Short term, China loses Iranian oil. China loses Venezuelan oil. China's energy costs go up temporarily. And the Americans look like they are winning this battle. But medium term, America is depleting its military resources fighting this war. The Pentagon has deployed a huge proportion of its most powerful weapons to the Middle East. Patriot missile systems, THAAD, F-35s, precision munitions. Every missile fired in the Persian Gulf is 1 less missile available for the Pacific. Every interceptor used over the Strait of Hormuz is 1 less interceptor available to defend Taiwan. And here's the thing the Americans don't seem to understand. These weapons cannot be replaced quickly. The military-industrial complex is designed to make money, not to make weapons quickly. It takes years to build a Patriot battery. It takes years to produce F-35s. You cannot spend your weapons, stockpile on one war, and quickly refill it for the next war. China, meanwhile, is watching. China is taking notes. China is identifying every American military weakness that this war reveals, every American weapon system that fails, every American tactic that doesn't work. This is incredibly valuable intelligence for China. Because China knows that at some point the confrontation over Taiwan will come, and China wants to know exactly what America can and cannot do. Long term, the Gulf states drift toward China. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. They start pricing some oil in yuan. Not all of it, not immediately, but gradually. Because they see that China is reliable. China doesn't invade. China doesn't demand regime change. China just buys oil and pays reliably. And when that happens, when Gulf oil starts being priced in yuan, the petrodollar system begins to crack. Not break immediately, but crack. And cracks, once started, spread. Now I want to connect this to something I've discussed before on the finance outlier. The structure of the world system. At the center of the world system is the empire. The empire provides the military muscle. The empire enforces the rules. And built around the empire is the financial system. Wall Street, the City of London, the Bank of International Settlements. These are the game masters. They need the empire to protect the system, but the empire must prove it can do that. What this war is showing is that the American empire is struggling to do what it is supposed to do. It cannot protect the Gulf states from Iranian drones. It cannot quickly reopen the Strait of Hormuz. It cannot control oil prices. It cannot even control its own narrative. The whole world can see that America went to war based on a plan that didn't work. This is a credibility crisis for the American empire, not just militarily, financially, because the financial system depends on confidence in the empire. When confidence in the empire drops, confidence in the dollar drops. When confidence in the dollar drops, the petrodollar system weakens. And China is the only country in the world right now with the credibility, the economic size, and the strategic patience to offer an alternative. Let me now give you some very specific numbers because numbers make this very clear. China's yuan-denominated oil trade has been growing every year for the past decade. In 2015, basically 0% of global oil was traded in yuan. By 2024, before this war started, it was approaching 20% of China's own oil imports being priced in yuan. Not yet in global terms, but growing fast. China also launched the Petro-Yuan contract on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange. This allows countries to buy and sell oil futures in yuan. And more countries are using it. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, some Middle Eastern countries. The system is expanding quietly, and here is the key strategic move that most people missed. When America unsanctioned Iranian oil at the start of this war, trying to keep oil prices low, something unexpected happened. America accidentally gave Iran the ability to sell its oil openly. Iran made $14 billion in a very short time. The total Iranian military budget for an entire year is only $10 billion. So America's own economic move made Iran richer, made Iran able to fight longer, and made China more connected to Iranian oil revenue. Everything America is doing to weaken China's energy supply is making China more determined to build alternative energy networks. China is accelerating its own domestic renewable energy production. China now produces more solar panels than the rest of the world combined. China has more electric vehicles on its roads than any other country. China is building nuclear power plants faster than any other country. Every time America threatens China's oil supply, China becomes more energy independent and less dependent on the petrodollar system. Now, I want to talk about what I think will happen next. And I want to be very clear. This is analytical speculation based on historical patterns and game theory. This is not prophecy. But based on the structural analysis, here is what I believe will happen. This war will end. At some point, America will have to accept a negotiated settlement with Iran. Because the war is becoming economically unsustainable for the global economy, oil prices are affecting ordinary Americans. The political will to continue this war is already weak, and Iran has not surrendered. When this war ends, America will be weaker. Not immediately, not dramatically, but structurally weaker. Its weapons stockpiles will be partially depleted. Its credibility in the Middle East will be reduced. Its relationships with the Gulf states will be damaged. Its ability to maintain the petrodollar system will be weakened. China will be stronger. It will have demonstrated strategic patience. It will have built relationships with both Iran and the Gulf states as the peacemaker. It will have used this period to further reduce its dependence on dollar-priced oil. And it will have gathered enormous intelligence about American military capabilities. The Gulf states will begin to diversify, not away from America completely, but they will start treating China as an equal partner, maybe even a preferred partner for economic issues. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, its plan to modernize its economy, is already heavily tied to Chinese investment. UAE is already one of China's most important trading partners. Qatar sells LNG to China. These relationships will deepen after this war. And gradually, not immediately, but gradually over the next 10 to 20 years, the petrodollar system will weaken. Not collapse overnight, but weaken. Yuan will take a bigger share of global oil trade. Dollar dominance will decline. And American power, which is built on dollar dominance, will decline with it. This is how China wins the oil war without firing a single shot. Now I want to give you the most important insight of today because everything I have talked about so far is about China's strategy. But the deeper insight is about something else. It is about the nature of power in the 21st century. In the 20th century, power was military. The most powerful country was the one with the most bombs, the most tanks, the most soldiers. You showed power by fighting wars and winning them. But in the 21st century, power is structural. The most powerful country is the one that sits at the center of the most important networks. Trade networks, energy networks, technology networks, financial networks. You don't need to win wars. You need to be so embedded in the global system that the system cannot function without you. America won the 20th century by building the most powerful military. But China is winning the 21st century by building the most important networks. China's Belt and Road Initiative connects over 140 countries through infrastructure. Roads, railways, ports, pipelines. The reach is extraordinary. China's trade network reaches every continent. China's manufacturing capacity produces 30% of global goods. China's rare earth mineral production controls 80% of global supply for critical technologies. And China's energy networks through Iran, Russia, Central Asia, and increasingly the Gulf states are being built into an alternative to the petrodollar system. America is fighting a military war in the Middle East. China is fighting a structural war for the 21st century. The structural war is more important because military power is visible and dramatic, but structural power is quiet and permanent. So let me bring this all together, because I want to leave you with a very clear picture on the finance outlier. The thesis of today is very simple. While America is spending trillions of dollars, deploying its most powerful military, and sacrificing its credibility fighting a war in Iran, China is quietly winning, quietly, patiently, strategically positioning itself to take over the global oil system. And with it, global financial dominance. America thought it was attacking China's energy supply, and in the short term it was. Chinese oil imports from Iran were disrupted. There was economic pain. There were price increases. But in the medium and long term, America has created the conditions for its own decline. It has weakened its Gulf state alliances. It has depleted its military resources. It has destroyed its credibility as a reliable partner. It has pushed the Gulf states toward China. It has given China the opportunity to position itself as the responsible, peaceful, reliable alternative to American hegemony. And it has accelerated China's own drive toward energy independence and de-dollarization. And China did all of this without firing a single shot, without sending a single soldier, without spending a single yuan on war. This is the genius of China's strategy. And this is the tragedy of America's strategy. The Americans are playing checkers. They see an enemy, Iran, and they attack it. Linear thinking, direct action. China is playing Go. Go is a Chinese board game where the objective is not to capture your opponent's pieces, but to surround them, to control territory, to build a position so strong that your opponent eventually has no good moves left. China is not attacking America directly. China is surrounding America's position, surrounding the petrodollar, surrounding the Gulf state alliances, surrounding the energy networks, building its own networks, building its own alternatives, waiting patiently. And every time America makes an aggressive move, China's surrounding position gets a little bit stronger. America gets a little more enclosed. This is why when I look at what is happening right now, I believe that history will record this war not as a victory for America, and not simply as a loss, but as the moment when America's century of global dominance began to genuinely end, and when China's century began to genuinely start. And China achieved this not on a battlefield, but in the quiet offices of Beijing's foreign ministry, in the boardrooms of Chinese state companies, in the construction yards building pipelines and ports across the world, in the strategic reserves of oil stored in Dalian and Zhoushan, and in the patient, calm, calculating mind of a civilization that has been playing this game for 5,000 years. That is my analysis for today on the Finance Outlier.